So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a Square sequence to edit my Square Instagram video in. So in Premiere Pro, I'm just going to go File, New, Sequence. And when I do that, I get this sequence, new sequence settings. So I'll go in and I'll give this sequence a name. And I'm going to go into settings and mess around with the settings. But before I do that, I will select a preset that's as close to what I'm using as possible. Now I just happen to have shot this in 24 frames per second. So I'm going to select 1080p 24 frames per second to edit in. Then I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to go under video frame size and I'm just going to do 1080 by 1080, and you see it automatically sets it up so that it's a vertical 1:1 ratio. And it's really that simple to get your sequence settings done. And all I have to do now is click OK. And here I have my Square Instagram settings. And that's it. So now I can begin adding footage. So I'm just going to copy this clip right here and add it in by pasting it. And like it's a one single interview clip that's 2 minutes long. But wow, that actually lined up pretty good. So one thing I will show you though is below, if we just toggle, I'll just turn off the top track so you can see what's below. Now that doesn't line up quite as good. So what you may find you have to do is just go in and move your frame. Now unfortunately, what you'll see is I ended up, when I click on here and I move this around, it's always going to allow me to only move, gotta really be careful there. It's only ever going to allow you to move what's on the top track. So that's problematic if you are like me and you have multiple things down there. So what I'm actually going to have to do is turn off my link because I have all of these things linked. I'm just going to turn that back and trim the top layer back so I can get to the layer underneath. So now this is how this works. When I double click in my program window here, I get this blue wireframe, and that blue wireframe allows me to reposition what's in the frame. And now there's my wide shot. The reason it's a little more complicated for me is because I have two tracks. So again, if I'll just trim that back and turn this back on, if I double click now, I can only move what's on the top track. Even if I turn that off, when I double click on it, notice that's not moving because I'm moving only what's on the top track. This video is a little tight and she leaned forward, so I'm starting at the chin. So ideally that's the shot that we would use. And if we want more room over here for words, we can kind of like slide her over like so. All right, so that's basically how you would set up a Square Instagram sequence, and that is how you reposition this video. So the video clip that you're editing is still 1080 high by 1920 pixels wide. So it's real simple for you just to, you know, kind of move that around. All right. So one thing I have to point out now, and I hope this makes sense, but this is really important note. So just to review before I go any further, I went File, New, Sequence, and then I went into my sequence settings after I selected what was as close to what I shot as possible. So I think you guys will be shooting in 30 frames per second. Then I went into my settings and changed my frame size to 1080 pixels by 1080 pixels. So that's pretty straightforward. But one thing I need to point out is when you go to export your video, you know, you do the same thing, File, Export Media. What you want to avoid is, what you want to avoid is exporting using these presets like YouTube 1080p, because what you can see is going to happen is it's still going to add those black bars. So it's still going to go on to Instagram as a widescreen video, and you just won't have, you know, you're just going to end up with these black bars on either side instead of an actual square video. So what you want to select is just match source, and you can do medium bit rate so that it's not a super large file size. So the higher the bit rate, the larger the file size, more data. So with that match source, you can then click export, and you're going to be exporting a square video.